Okay, here we go. It's Tuesday, March 18th, 2014. Um, Dad, I wanted to ask you about when you and Mom first met.
Okay.
And so to start it off, I mean, when you and Mom first met, can you just tell me, like, how old were you? How old was Mom? What were you two doing in terms of your jobs at that time? Where were you living? Just sort of set the stage of where you were in life at the time you met.
Okay. We met, I think it was probably around September of 1961, maybe October. I was living, I had an apartment in the Colonnade Apartments in Newark, which was in downtown Newark. They were new apartment buildings, which had been designed by Mies van der Rohe, I think. At that time, so I think it was around September or maybe October of 1961. I was at a dance, or it's actually a reunion. This requires a little background. This is before the days of Facebook and singles bars, and there were summer resorts where, and this was before the time that travel was not as it was more expensive than it is where it was in '61 or today. And I had gone to a resort, an adult resort in New Hampshire in the White Mountains called Lake Tarleton Club. It was a resort for single people mainly. And apparently, Mom had also gone there, but at a different time, and this was a reunion of people who had gone or vacationed at Lake Tarleton, which was a lovely resort beautifully situated in the White Mountains. And so Mom apparently had been there too, and so she was at this reunion at a ballroom, I guess was in one of the Midtown hotels in Manhattan. And so that's where we met. She was with a girlfriend, and I think I was alone, and I saw this pretty young lady with a friend, and we began to talk, and that's how we met.
So this is 61, so you're 38, roughly?
So yeah, I guess so, 1961, I guess I was about 38.
And, no, go ahead.
And so that's it, and so I met your mother, and we talked. She was very attractive, and I got her telephone number. And I guess within a week after that, I called her on the telephone. We had a date.
And where was Mom living then?
And Mom was living with her parents on Ocean Parkway in Brooklyn. I think I remember the address, 300 Ocean Parkway, I think it was. So I had to learn how to drive to get to Brooklyn. But I found my way. It wasn't too hard.
So the first time you went out together, you picked her up at...
I picked her up in Brooklyn, at her folks' apartment. And what did we do? I think think it was a Sunday. I think it was a Sunday, and it was a Sunday afternoon, and as I recall, we were walking on Park Avenue before going to a restaurant for dinner. Maybe I'm mixing it up. Anyway.
Let me go back in time a second. When you met at the resort in New Hampshire.
No, we didn't meet at the resort.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, it was a reunion of folks who had been to the resort, and the reunion was in Manhattan.
That's right.
Okay. And do you remember, maybe you said, what hotel was it at in Manhattan? Or
I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember. It was one of the nice hotels in Midtown.
And when you and you approached Mom when she was standing there with a friend?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
There were a lot of people there.
And so, do you remember anything about that conversation when you walked up to Mom and she's there with a friend?
No, I don't remember much of the conversation. It was pleasant. I don't remember much of the conversation at all.
And was this reunion at the hotel in Manhattan, I mean, was it sort of for the purpose of, single folks meeting each other, or not necessarily?
I don't know what the purpose was. Well, I don't know who the organizers of it were. The organizers were probably people like a couple of fellows like me who had been there, or they thought it would be a good idea to have a reunion or an opportunity, further opportunity to meet people, for guys to meet girls. I had been to the Lake Tahoe. I met a lot of nice girls, some of whom I took out. And so it was, I don't know who organized the reunion, but it was a very nice idea that turned out to be nice because I met your mother.
And, okay, so then fast forward to your first date. You had called her up, and you pick her up at her parents' apartment. Did you meet Jack and Emma when you picked her up? Did you go in and meet them?
I probably did, but I don't remember.
Okay.
If I didn't meet him then, I met him soon afterwards.
And do you remember anything about that first date?
I don't know whether it was the first date or the second date, but it was a Sunday afternoon, and I remember your mother and I were walking on Park Avenue, and we were walking past the Seagram's building, which was then a modern landmark. It had only fairly recently been built. And so jokingly I said, "Do you want that building? I'll buy it for you." And she thought that was funny. But the next day when I got to the office, I drew up a deed for the Seagram's building, was I think between 52nd and 53rd, and maybe 51st and 52nd Street and Park Avenue. So it was easy to get the meets and bounds description from my head. And so I drew a deed for the property at that address in Park Avenue in New York. And when I saw your mother the next time, I gave her the deed, and I made a gift of the Seagram's building to your mother. I remember, I don't know whether it was the first date or the second date, we went to dinner, I remember this quite vividly, to the Homestead, which is a steak place, a steakhouse in the Meat District of Manhattan, around 14th Street in the West Side. And I remember when we were sitting down and we had been seated and we were looking at the menu and ordering, a waiter went by with a dessert cart to serve desserts to a table near where we were sitting. And So we ordered steak, but she didn't eat much of the steak because she was saving her room in her stomach for desserts that she had seen on that dessert card. So I remember that there was a whole steak that went to waste.
Did Mom say something at the time when the dessert cart came around that she was, or did
Well,
you
she said something that it looked good or something. I forgot exactly. It's a long time ago. But I thought that was funny. Well, that's how we met.
And when you first started dating, had a couple of dates, at what point were you, did things start to get more serious and that maybe you were dating each other exclusively?
Well, I think we became engaged before the end of the year of '61. And we had been dating fairly regularly. Some nights, some evenings when I would work late during the week, I would call her and tell her that I would like to drive over to Brooklyn to visit with her. Just a couple of times. And when I got there, Emma, her mother, insisted on feeding me because I hadn't had any supper, so she would prepare supper for me. This happened a couple of times.
So between roughly what month in '61 did you meet?
Pardon?
Roughly in what month of 1961 did you meet?
Meet?
Meet for the first time.
I would guess it was probably around September or October.
So between September '61 and the end of '61, you met and were engaged?
Let me see.
Was it just a few months?
Yeah, I would guess. It's hard to remember now. It's a long time ago. But we became engaged. I've forgotten one. Was toward the end of the year of '61. And
But does it sound right, Dad, that between the time you met and the time that you got engaged, it might have been 3 or 4 months?
yeah. Yeah, at least. And we got engaged, I think we were on a date, and we were sitting on the couch in the living room of her parents' apartment, and your mother began to cry. And I forgot what the conversation, why, but anyway, she began to cry, I guess because she figured it was about time I asked her to marry her. But in any event, I do remember that. I don't remember what caused it. Nothing in particular, but I guess she thought that it was time for me to say something, and I figured, well, oh my, this is it. and we became engaged.
At that moment when you were sitting on the couch?
I don't know if it was that moment
or
the next time I saw her. I don't remember that.
Did you talk to Jack or Emma about proposing to Mom before you did, or you just proposed to her?
I don't remember if I did or I didn't. My guess is I really don't remember.
You did.
I did? Is my memory pretty good so far?
We'll interview you separately, Mom. Well, the reason I ask is because there's always this mythology about, you know, the guy asking the girl's parents, but I don't really know anybody who's done that. and I was curious if that really was.
I don't recall. I don't recall that I did.
And
I might have. It could have been. I don't remember.
and when you first met Mom, what was she doing? Was she working somewhere?
Oh, Mom was working for a big advertising agency on Madison Avenue for BBD and Batten Bard. I forgot the name of it, but they were known by their initials. One of the biggest advertising agencies, and she was doing, I think, market research of some kind. But when we became engaged, she quit her job.
And leading up to the engagement, I mean, so you're dating, over a span of a few months, 3-4 months. How frequently would you see each other, talk to each other?
Oh, fairly frequently. We'd see each other over. Oh, I remember after we were engaged. Emma and Jack invited my mother and my brother Bernie and Muriel, his wife, for dinner. I think it was a Sunday afternoon, so the families could meet. And I was driving to Brooklyn. I had just left my apartment in Newark, and I was going on to McCarter Highway, and I was hit by another car. I had an automobile accident. Nobody was hurt. This was before cell phones, and I guess I got myself to a telephone somewhere to call to say I'd be late, that I had been in an automobile accident. And it did damage the front end of my convertible, my Ford convertible, which was a very nice car. The only convertible I ever owned.
Had Mom met your parents before that day?
Well, my father had passed away, so was my mother. No. I don't recall. I don't remember. I do, well, somewhere when after, there was a time when Nan and your mother and I were still dating before we were engaged. And it looked like I was pretty serious. Bernie and Muriel wanted to meet this girl that I was serious about. And I recall we went out to dinner, Bernie and Muriel and your mother and I, to what was a very nice eating place in the Short Hills called the Chanticleer. And Bernie and Muriel met Nan. They thought she was very nice, as I did. I do remember that.
And was your relationship with Bernie at the time that he was, or Muriel, was that he was going to tell you whether he approved or not of who you're dating?
No. I don't think. I obviously I would want my family to approve of the girl I was going to marry, but that wasn't. They just wanted to meet the girl that I was interested in.
I'm just curious if your relationship with Bernie was such that he would tell you, that keep his.
Oh, I'm sure he told me that, or Muriel told me that they liked your mother, but no, I wasn't looking for their approval. I would obviously like them to approve. So that's how and then the wedding was arranged to take place in February.
Who was planning the wedding?
Who was planning it?
Yeah.
Nan's mother. Nan's mother, really. I guess Jack wasn't really planning it. He was paying for it.
I mean, were you aware of the planning as it was going on, that we're looking at this location to have it and all of that? I mean, did you?
No. I really don't remember that. I didn't participate so much in the planning. I remember Emma thought that maybe Nan's brother Lenny should be the best man, and I said, no, my brother Abe's going to be the best man. And I sort of, we've got a whole album of pictures taken at the wedding. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I don't think I've ever looked at it since.
Was it the Essex House? Is that where it was?
It was at the, I think it was at the Essex House. It was a hotel on Central Park South. It might have been the Essex House. No, it was the Hampshire House. The Hampshire House. And I remember the wedding, I think, was a Saturday night. And that night, your mother and I stayed at the Plaza Hotel. And Sunday morning, we had breakfast at the Plaza, and my brother Abe picked us up to drive us out to it wasn't then Kennedy Airport, it was Idlewild Airport.
One of the greatest names for anything ever, by the way, Idlewild.
Idlewild. And we went on our honeymoon to Jamaica in the Caribbean. And we were at the name of the hotel is, I think I remember, the Arawak. It was a modern hotel, very nice hotel in Jamaica. I've forgotten the name of the location on the island. Montego, no, was it? I think Montego Bay. Anyway, that's where we were. And one day we rented a car to drive to Kingston and my mother wanted to buy dishware and stuff like that, English dishware. I don't know what else we bought there.
And how long were you there?
We were at the Arawak, I suppose, about a week.
And so you left for your honeymoon straight from the wedding or the next morning?
The next morning.
And so then you come back to the States.
Oh, yeah. This was the apartment. I was not a very good housekeeper, and the building was a beautiful apartment building, modern building, mostly glass. But my apartment was a mess, and so Emma came over and she straightened the place out. She cleaned the apartment so that your mother and I could. I lived in a mess, but that wasn't. I didn't want your wife to live in this. My wife to live in this mess. And certainly she didn't want to live in that mess, but Emma straightened it out.
So this is while you were on the honeymoon.
I don't recall just when that was, what she did, when it was cleaned up. But when we came back, the apartment had been straightened out.
Did you know in advance that she was going to do that, or you just you did?
She had. I'd have to give her access to the apartment. But then your mother wasn't very happy in that apartment. It was the building was a very lovely building. It was a couple of buildings, modern, the colonnades, but it was not a very good neighborhood. And your mother was not very happy there. So I had a lease. So I had to figure out a way to get out of the lease.
Why? How long was your lease for?
I forgot. But for at least for a year or maybe a couple of years. So I did one of my greatest legal jobs was getting out of that lease, which I successfully got out of. And we moved to an apartment in Orange, a guard apartment, where our neighbors were Judy and Albert Siegel. In the condos.
Can I just back up for a second? So how long were you and Mom together in that apartment in the colonnade? How long did you stay there?
A couple of months. Not long.
And had you talked about moving before the wedding?
No, I don't think we had really talked about it. We thought we'd live in that apartment. It was a nice apartment, nice building. My apartment was a mess because I was not a very good housekeeper. But we got so we were not there very long, maybe several months.
And so the Colonnade building, I mean, it's it's really like two high-rise buildings, right? And, you know, I can picture what it looks like now, but at the time, I mean, what was that neighborhood like? Were there places to walk to there, or did you have to drive?
No, the two buildings were opposite each other, but the neighborhood was a lower middle-class neighborhood. There was a food market where when your mother couldn't stand going there, she saw people stealing goods off the shelf, and I think your mother didn't feel very safe in the neighborhood. So that's when we figured out, I wrote a very carefully drafted letter to the owners of the building to get out of the lease, which they agreed to do without any penalties. And we moved to the apartment in Orange.
And so you said, I'm just sort of jumping around a little bit, but going back in time, you said that you know, it was 3 or 4 months between the time you met and the time you got engaged. Was that typical of that time, or was that moving fast, or what?
It was probably faster than we got engaged. In other words, I had always thought that before I became engaged to get married, I should know the person I was interested in marrying pretty well, and it should be a long courting period. But this, I think, was several months. I don't remember how many months.
How many months, Bob?
Yeah. All right, no coaching.
It was 4 months, right? That
yeah.
Nan signaled 4 fingers for 4 months. Okay. And did you talk about whether or not you wanted to have kids?
No, we really didn't talk about it. We expected we would have children. And when it happened, it was great. But I don't know if we really talked about it.
And what about like levels of religious observance? Were they sort of similar in Mom's family and your family, or different, or what?
Probably this is pretty much similar. I myself was not very observant. My mother was very observant, and my siblings were observant.
Did your mother keep kosher?
Yes. Yes. As a matter of fact, at the wedding, at the reception, there had to be special arrangements for what was served to my mother for the meal, as I recall.
So you were raised in a kosher house?
My mother was kosher. My father was kosher to the extent that he ate it. He ate it at home, but outside my father was not kosher. And I was not kosher. But my mother was very good.
So would your mother eat out at a restaurant that wasn't kosher, or no?
She would not, if we ate out at a restaurant, she would not eat meat. There weren't many kosher restaurants, if any. But if we ate out at a restaurant, she would have fish.
And when you first started dating Mom, were you dating anybody else? Were you going on dates with other girls at the time, at the beginning?
At the beginning, yeah.
And so, how quickly, from the time you met, did it sort of become exclusive? That, okay, I'm courting Nan.
I don't remember.
And can you remember any other things that you did? You know, whether it's on a date or just some afternoon to spend time together?
Well, I don't remember particular dates. I remember one or two. I remember we went one night to a restaurant on East 52nd Street in New York called the San Marino. I remember this because after we had dinner and we walked, Nan and I walked to get my car, and it occurred to me, I said, either I said it out loud to your mother, or I was thinking, I said that the bill was awful high for what we had. And that Monday I called the restaurant and I spoke to the manager. It's a very nice upscale restaurant. And I spoke to the manager and I said it seemed to me that the bill was kind of high for what we had, and he asked what table we were at, and he, being the owner of the restaurant, he knew what table it was. And he agreed that the bill was high for what we had. I forgot what the numbers were. We figured out that the waiter had a little scheme going on, and I figured out what it was. He would present the same bill to two different tables and whatever. I forgot what it was, but in any event, the manager said, well, he would come in for another meal, or he would send me a check, and he sent me a check, and it was very upright and very square.
And when you would go out for a meal at that time, did most people or you pay cash, with a check, with a credit card, what?
Credit cards were not used as much as they are now, and I don't remember. I might have had, there were very few credit cards available. I think the only one that I knew of was Diners Club. And if I had a credit card, it would have been a Diners Club credit card. I might have paid by a credit card, I don't remember. Probably by cash.
And did you spend much time with Mom's family, like either at their apartment on a regular basis during the sort of courting period?
Oh yeah, if I drove over during the week, I would spend time doing many of those trips. For example, let's say if I would work in the office till around 6 or 7 o'clock, and I'd call Nan. Would it be okay if I'd come over? I'll visit with you. And so she said, "Sure, come on." And I would drive over without having had dinner. And when Emma found out I hadn't had dinner, she insisted on preparing dinner for me. And I'd spend the evening and go home.
What was your impression of Mom's parents?
They were very nice. They were, in other words, they were the kind of people that the family that I had grown up with. They were a Jewish home, nice Jewish people. They were. Jack was an immigrant, like my parents had been immigrants. Although Jack came to this country a number of years after my parents came to this country. Yeah, it was the kind of family that I would be comfortable marrying into.
And had you spent much time with Lenny during the courtship period before you were engaged?
Okay. I had met Lenny, didn't have much to, but
and this is Mom's older brother.
Mom's older brother. This was, it was, I had a date with your mother to go to a Columbia football game. And I asked her to prepare lunch. I think it was for homecoming. Yeah, it was for homecoming. That would have been the fall of 1961. And your mother had ordered sandwiches and had them in the refrigerator. And then when I picked her up to go, she found out that Lenny had eaten the sandwiches. And she was very upset. So that would have probably been around October of 1961.
I mean, was Lenny living in the same apartment, or was he out living on his own?
No, he was living in the apartment. Yeah.
So you had met.
Subsequently, he moved out, and he moved into Manhattan. I don't know whether that was before or after your mother and I were married. Probably after. I don't remember.
And what was your first impression of Lenny? And what was he doing when you first met him?
No, he was a school teacher in Manhattan. I don't know if I had much. You know, it seems to me I have the dates wrong, because it must have been before I said earlier that I had met your mother early in the fall of 1961. It must have been in the spring, because there were Sunday afternoons when we went out to the beach club that Nan's parents were members of out at Atlantic Beach. I remember the first time I was out there, your mother said, we'll go out to El Patio. And I thought she said, my patio. So it turned out that my patio was El Patio, and it was a beach club at Atlantic Beach. So it must have been in the spring of '61 that I met your mother.
And what was, just to get back to the question, so what was Lenny like when you first met him? Or what was your impression?
I don't know if I had any impression. I could get along with him.
Did you talk politics in the family at that time, either with Mom and her family, or with Lenny? Was that a frequent topic of conversation?
I don't think so. Well, I wouldn't have spent enough time with Lenny to talk politics. I mean, it was just if Lenny was home and I picked up your mother, we're going out on a date, we would just usually a little small talk, and your mother and I would leave to go out. So I don't really remember much about that.
And what do you remember about the when you proposed to Mom? Did you have a ring?
Not then. Not then. We got, after we were engaged, then we were going to get a ring, and we had, Barry and Muriel were friendly with another couple, the Goodmans, and he was in the jewelry business in New York. And he arranged with a friend of his in the diamond business to show us a collection of diamonds, and then we would have it make it made into a ring. So that's so the ring came after we got engaged.
And but describe for me the moment you proposed to Mom. Where were you? Had you planned it?
We were sitting on the couch in the living room, and I remember your mother started to cry, and I couldn't figure out what she was crying about, but I figured, and I can't remember what the conversation was, but it was at that, in that connection that I guess your mother was crying because she expected me to ask her to marry her, and I figured that wasn't a bad idea. And I don't remember the conversation, but it was at that moment that we became engaged.
So on the spot, you sort of figured out what you thought was upsetting her, and you proposed.
I think that's how it was.
Had you been thinking about it leading up to? I mean, it must have been on your mind that where is this headed, marriage?
No, I hadn't really been thinking about it. Because at that time I thought that if I was going to get married, I would want to know the person I was marrying for longer than a couple of months. But at the time it happened, I figured it was a good time to have it happen.
And how much time between when you first proposed and when the wedding happened?
3 or 4 months.
And Had you, before you had dated Mom, had you ever been close to proposing to somebody else? I don't mean like immediately before, but ever in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. The answer is yes.
And was it did, was it important to you to marry somebody who was Jewish and who?
Well, if I didn't marry somebody who was Jewish, it would create havoc with my mother. But to me, if I were to fall in love with somebody who wasn't Jewish, and it was somebody I wanted to marry, it didn't happen though. My preference was that there would be that it should be somebody who was Jewish. Would avoid any upset within the family.
And I'm looking, Dad, and it looks like the camera probably has like 4 or 5 minutes left. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about your time when you met Mom, when you were dating very early on, that I should have asked about?
I don't. Well, let's see. I do remember when we became engaged. Albert and Ruth Burstein, I think, had a party for our Columbia friends. So that everybody could meet your mother. Wasn't it Burstein's? No, the Bursteins.
Burstein's had us to dinner at their apartment, but the Kahns had a big party for us in New Rochelle.
In New Rochelle? They lived in Mamara.
Did they live in New Rochelle at one point?
Oh, they were living in New Rochelle for a while. Right. Okay. Yeah.
They had a very big party.
Okay.
And what about, so you had a circle of friends from college and before. Was there, what about folks sort of from Mom's world, whether extended family or folks from work? Did you get to meet, who do you remember meeting sort of on her side of things?
Who do I remember meeting? What?
Well, you just described sort of a get-together that the Bursteins put together. Yeah, and the Kahns. Did Mom have sort of an extended family or circle of friends that you started to become acquainted with?
No, I met Nan's uncle, Murray, who was in partnership in business with Nan's father, with Jack. I don't remember whether I met any of the relatives before we were married. I just don't remember. I got to meet Nan's relatives certainly after we were married or at the wedding.
Did you ever play cards with Jack?
No. I watched him play cards, but I never played cards with him. No, he was, I think it was after we got married, the millinery people would have go away for a long weekend up in the Catskills, I think, to the Concord Hotel. I don't know if it's still in business. And Jack and his millinery friends would play poker most of the weekend. But I would sort of watch from time to time while they were playing. playing poker.
Did you want to play, or you didn't want to
No.
get involved?
I think the stakes were higher than what I would be comfortable playing.
Okay, I think we're at the end, so we're going to stop for now,
Okay,
and we'll pick it back up.
we spent a long time on that subject.